of our session is a poll. And the poll is ideally supposed to just get us all familiar with the session and give us an understanding of what we have lined up for tonight. We also have a brief agenda here. So our brief agenda, we have the welcome, which I am giving now. We'll have inputs and best practices on gender transformative WASH. We'll have a Q&A session and then a wrap up and way forward session as well. So to get us started, we'll start with the poll. You can go to your Pathable. So I think the easiest way to do this is to minimize your Zoom and maximize your main account on the World Water Week website. And I think my colleague will share the link in the chat, but it should be available directly on your screens. So when you get to this page, just click polls, and polls is immediately after chat. And in the polls, you will find a number of questions. The first question should read, what is your understanding of gender transformative? So in this case, gender transformative WASH, or just the concept of gender transformation. Please try and explain it in 5 words or less. And we have 5 minutes to attempt the poll. And please note that there are 2 questions in the poll, 2 successive questions. So you can focus on the first 2 questions. Thank you. If there are any questions, please raise your hand, just in case the instructions were not clear. Actually, the first question is, what is your professional background? And great that everyone picked that up. So kindly also attempt the third question, which is, have you previously engaged with gender transformative approaches? If so, in which context? So I can already see that we have some gender and social inclusion specialists in the room, researchers, civil engineer, political scientist, and WASH and menstrual hygiene. Great. Great answers coming up on what our understanding of gender transformative is. I like the empowerment, addressing long-term strategic requirements, motivating change of unequal gender norms. That's great. And I see a good number of people have encountered or engaged gender transformative approaches in the agriculture sector, management, project and gender transformative water approaches. Okay, great. So at least we have a picture and an understanding of who's in the room and how much we've engaged with the gender transformative approach. So to also tie in or give a brief background to what gender transformative programming is, we will play a video shortly, very quick video that I hope will summarize or give a very basic introduction to gender transformative WASH programming.
To meet the water and sanitation crisis head-on, water institutions need to modernize and attract a talented workforce with a diverse skill set. This means including women. Companies with more gender diversity on executive teams have found to be up to 21% more likely to outperform on profitability. Greater gender diversity has also been linked to more user-friendly design and improved customer service. Yet, on average, only 18% of staff in water utilities are women. So why are women absent from the water sector? Broadly speaking, women face multiple barriers in 4 key career stages: attraction to the sector, recruitment, retention, and advancement. To begin with, women are often discouraged from pursuing studies and careers in technical areas. Only 38% of tertiary graduates from STEM fields around the world are women. Then, to join the sector, women face many bottlenecks, including biases in the recruitment process. A study found that only an average of 20% of staff hired at water utilities are women. It's hard for women employed by water institutions to stay in the sector due to issues such as a lack of family-friendly policies and unsupportive work environments. For such reasons, women engineers left water utilities at almost double the rate between 2018 and 2019. Finally, women face many challenges to advance their careers, including less access to training and networking opportunities. Only around 23% of utility managers are women. The good news is there are many actions water institutions can adopt to address these barriers. Water companies can organize career talks, outreach programs, or loans and scholarships for women pursuing studies in STEM fields. They can adopt competency-based hiring or blind recruitment processes to address unconscious bias among hiring panels. They can also promote a respectful workplace environment and offer flexible work arrangements, or support women's career advancement by increasing access to leadership and technical training. As you can see, small investments to address barriers faced by women can help improve inclusion in the sector. As modern water institutions face increasing demands for water services, drawing on available female talent is not just the right thing to do, it is also the smart thing to do.
Okay, great. So the video forms the basis of our discussion tonight, and which is gender transformative approaches to WASH programming. And we believe that following a gender transformative approach can transform the power structures underlying unequal relations in the sector. And this is not only the water sector, but the WASH sector in general, providing an enabling environment for marginalized women to articulate their voices, take on leadership roles, and set political agendas is central to delivering inclusive policies and achieving resilient and equitable WASH programming. So with this background, allow me to introduce our wonderful speakers who will share their experiences working with the gender transformative approaches in the WASH sector. We've dubbed our session a speed dating session because we're pressed for time. We have 4 great speakers and very little time. So our first speaker will be Miles Elledge, who's a director at the Batson Center for Global Commerce at the University of the South. In his role at the center, he teaches leadership, strategy, international development. And prior to joining the center, Mr. Elledge served in an executive role with the WASH technology startup as a global business director with a large nonprofit applied research organization. Currently, He holds a master's degree in public and international affairs with a certificate in international political economy. Yes, from the University of Pittsburgh. He completed his bachelor's degree in global studies from the University of the South. Following Miles, we will have Euphrasia Luseka, a Kenyan, who's a water governance specialist and co-lead of the rural water supply network, and the Leave No One Behind theme and decolonization component. She's a seasoned water governance expert with 13 years experience in leadership, strategy development, partnerships, and management in the WASH sector nationally and regionally and internationally. And she's specialized in WASH public policy and institutional strengthening of WASH institutions, including urban and rural utilities, and has worked with several WASH sector actors, government development partners, and CSOs and the like. She also has several publications in her field. Followed by, we'll then go to Chola Mbilima, who's a senior inspector financial and commercial management at the National Water Supply and Sanitation Council in Zambia, with 15 years of experience in regulating, mainly focusing on economic regulation, policy and strategy, M&E benchmarking, capacity building, and gender mainstreaming. She holds an MBA with background in development economics and integrated water resource management. Chola is also a certified trainer, coach, a course designer, and facilitator and integrity coach. And last but not least, we'll have Sue Cavill, who's a freelancer with more than 20 years global experience in water supply, sanitation, and hygiene approaches, programs, research, evaluations, and strategy development. She pays special attention to gender equality and social inclusion, and has been a continuing theme throughout her work. Sue is an affiliate of the Sanitation Learning Hub in the UK. So I will go straight into it and hand over to Miles to share his experience with us.
Great, thank you, Grace, for the introduction, and good day to you all. I'm very pleased to be with you. I'm going to talk in a few minutes that we have about gender and sanitation, and some examples of work that I've done over the last couple of years, looking at programming that's trying to reach the goal of transformative initiatives. Next slide. Let me start just to, so that we have a common understanding of how we're using the terms. So when we talk about gender, we're talking about both men and women, and all genders. And when we think about transformational, we're really thinking about how do you make fundamental changes in situations that are inequitable, that would address gender norms and power dynamics. So a key aspect of this is can we promote and put in place change that will be positive values and action that will bring about better equality. So a key outcome in programming that is transformative programming would have an outcome that has an explicit focus on this gender power relationships, or reducing the gaps in agency or voice or control over resources. Next slide. I want to walk through 3 examples of work that I've been involved in. It draws heavily from work with the Gates Foundation. And the first 2 examples come from work with the Reinvent the Toilet program, which is a 7-year running program related to new technology development for sanitation treatment solutions, both at a household level as well as at a shared facility level. So the first example looks at gender lens being applied in the context of prototype development of a new technology and a prefabricated toilet cabin design. And in this example, the team of engineers, which happened to be all men, developed a design that had louvered windows in the cabin design, which was an excellent approach to dealing with ventilation and creating some light for the interior cabin, which is a common issue and concern for privacy and safety and security of using the toilet. But as they rolled out the prototypes for testing, they found that women in particular were concerned about the louvered windows still being accessible, that people could view, people could peek in, one could put a camera through the louvered window and observe what was happening inside the cabin. So the design team worked further with stakeholder groups through the piloting of the prototype to come up with a design where they put a fan inside the window. And this was able to block the view, but it also maintained the lighting and the ventilation goals in the original design. So this is an example of giving voice, and that when given voice, that the issues of privacy and safety emerged, particularly for women in this instance, and that informed making the product better. So this is an example of really sort of the interplay of gender and sanitation, and that it is indeed bi-directional. That one, by opening up opportunities for equality, you are promoting empowerment, but you're also creating a product that will be used, which will go a long way toward improving sanitation outcomes. Next slide, please. So the second example, also from the Reinvent the Toilet program, but a different technology application, reflects on some pilot work in India with small communities where they were looking to develop a shared toilet facility where 4 or 5 families might share the same toilet and be responsible for operation and maintenance of that toilet. So the design was toying with the idea of should we do 1 cabin or 2 cabins for this particular community-based setting. And there was resounding support and preference for having 2 stalls that were gender desegregated in this particular Indian community. So both men and women expressed the strong preference to have segregated stalls. A second aspect of the design was that there were urinals designed on the exterior of the cabin for men to use. And the strategy with this design was to free up the cabin. So as men were urinating, someone else could also be using the interior cabin. It also went a long way toward cleanliness of the cabin by keeping the urinals on the outside, which is a major concern for many public toilets. But through the process of prototyping and consultations with the testing in the field, they got very positive feedback on the overall design, but they got important input from men about the size and the positioning of the urinals on the exterior, and also the level of partitioning or closure that was there to ensure privacy. So in this example, even men had concerns about safety and privacy that needed to be brought into the design. The third aspect of this example related to menstrual hygiene vending machine and a disposal chute for used menstrual pads that was built into the interior of the cabin. This was a feature that initially had some concern that not all users, particularly men, might be uncomfortable if these menstrual hygiene amenities were available inside the cabin. But it turned out through trial and the focus groups around the product prototype that the men were in fact very supportive of having these amenities available, that they recognized it was a concern for men and girls in their lives, and they were very supportive of having both the vending and the disposal options built into the design. Next slide, please. So my third and final example comes from some very recent work related to SFDs, or ship flow diagrams. Some of you may be familiar with this tool. It's become increasingly popular, and it's a tool that's very quantitatively heavy. It allows you to look at an urban plan for sanitation and take a snapshot of what is happening in a particular community, in a particular urban area. So it looks at how fecal sludge is being managed at each point across the sanitation value chain. And one of the key outputs of the diagnostic is this example of a slide here that really gives you a picture, the map of the city with regard to fecal sludge. And it uses kind of a red-green coding of safely managed for green and not well managed, poorly managed for red. So it gives you very rapidly a way to look at the quantities or the percentage of fecal sludge at each step in the chain and how that is being managed. So this tool has been around for over 10 years. It's been applied in more than 120 cities around the world. And in 2020, we began to look at modifications to the guidance of the SFDs to be ensure that the process, the tools, and the reports were taking into account gender issues. Next slide, please. So here is just a sample of the recommendations that we put forward. So one of the examples or recommendations is that the data collection process, both from the community engaged, but also the doers of the work, need to be gender inclusive to be sure that we have good representation as you go through that analytical process. Secondly, that the participatory processes pay particular attention to how questions are written, the tools are designed, how things are asked, who is being asked, and who is doing the asking. And that has gender implications, and it will have an important impact on the findings that one might generate. We also promoted the idea of having sex disaggregated data throughout the process. And lastly, as you look at policies and regulations, that you bring in gender dynamics in analyzing existing policies from both perspectives of all genders, but also of the actors that are involved in wastewater management, that you be sure that you get representation and participation across genders. So through this work, it really brought home or emphasized the fact that who has access and who has access where, who has voice in services or who makes decisions, and who is most exposed to fecal flows, all have gender dimensions, and that these indeed do need to be captured in the SFD process. Thank you very much for your attention.
Great. Thank you, Miles. I think that brings in a very interesting perspective. Next, we have Euphrasia. Euphrasia will take us through from a governance perspective. And yes, so participants, you can type in your questions as we go in the polls so that the Q&A session can be quick, since our session is a speed dating session. Thank you.
Welcome to my presentation. I am honored to present to you today on what governments can do in accelerating gender transformative wash. This is a case from Kenya. This is the overview of the presentation and how we define gender transformative approaches in Kenya's drinking water sector. I proceed to introduce the partners. The first one is the United States Agency International Development through its project titled Kenya Integrated Water Sanitation and Hygiene. And then they worked closely with the Kakamega County government because water services provision is a devolved function in Kenya. These are the main duty bearers when it comes to water services provision. The secondary duty bearer is the Kakamega County Water and Sanitation Company, a top 10 utility in Kenya, serving more than 345,000 persons in Kakamega County. As I move to the next slide, I ask myself, how comes the gender agenda in the drinking water sector come from so far but moved so little? In a paper entitled No Empowerment Without Rights, No Rights Without Politics, Sangita and Avanti Muherji argue that progress towards gender equality and women's empowerment in the development agenda require a human rights-based approach and require support for the women's movement to activate and energize the agenda. In this regard, the United Nations organized four of the most outstanding world conferences on women in Mexico City in 1975. There were others, but I want to discuss about the Beijing Conference in 1995, which marked a significant turning point for all the global development goals for gender equality, as it is considered the key global policy document on the same. However, 26 years later, we still invest in the same challenges as gender inequality in the drinking water sector remains a critical issue everywhere. We talk about gender norms and why they seem not to go away. In fact, they have stuck with us around generation after generation. Although there have been some notable successes, overall progress towards parity has been low. Take, for example, the progress towards equality for women in the workplace. On the current trajectory, the World Economic Forum reckons it will take 81 years to close the gap completely. The index concludes that no country has been able to reach the last mile on gender equality, especially on the more complex issues. Could it be because we are stuck at pilots and projects instead of focusing on systems change and scaling? Or that we are stuck on policy design to instead of policy implementation? Could it be different if governments played a pivotal role in accelerating progress towards parity and adaptive learning and management took center stage in a gender-transformative water sector? This presentation provides a case that affirms the supposition that instead of focusing on making transformation the goal in gender and the drinking water, how to make it a way of doing business. Since water governance issues like gender transformative wash require a water governance approach, we look into the Kenya's legal framework on gender issues. We must appreciate that international obligations and treaties have on water and gender, and we can be able to see this through the Constitution of Kenya, which acknowledges safe water as a human right and also reflects non-discrimination by gender, ethnicity, land rights, and the likes. It also recognizes the need to address gender barriers through mutual accountability and collective action. Firstly, let's agree that women contributions and leadership are central to providing solutions to drinking water challenges. According to a World Bank 2019 publication titled Women in Water Utilities, Breaking Barriers, women are significantly underrepresented in the water and sanitation utilities as demonstrated on this figure. Gender inequality is not only a pressing moral and social issue, but also a critical economic challenge in work as well as society. The untapped and unmeasured contribution of women is enormous. Consider the facts. Women make up half of the world's population but generate 37% of the global GDP. Similarly, Kenyan women make 50% of its population but contribute lowly to the national GDP, reflecting the fact that they do not have equal access to labor markets, opportunities, and rights. As Kenyan women, we play a central role in the provision, management, and safeguarding of water. We are responsible for water collection in 80% of households without access to water on premises. 49% of us are in the labor force, constituting half of micro and small business owners, with 90% of our jobs depending on water. Our dual role and time burden affect economic productivity. However, illiteracy levels keep dwindling over the years, with the most recent study in 2015 indicating 57.3% illiteracy levels amongst women. Inequalities in access to education have an adverse impact on growth, attributing to the high rates of poverty amongst women. Therefore, the Kenyan woman in water starts at a disadvantaged position. The Kakamega County Gender and Water Challenge was several. Firstly, the issue of entrenched social norms hindered efforts to close the gender gap in the labor force. There was gender-based occupational segregation, gender-based hiring processes, workplace harassment, work-life conflict, workplace facilities that did not cater for the needs of women, including menstrual hygiene, less access to training opportunities, less female leaders, and from a customer's perspective, there was no finance to be able to support them to even set up their own wash businesses, and even worse, to get a safe water connection because they required to have a title deed, and tradition as well as culture did not allow some of the women to get this. This government-to-government partnership moved women in water in Kakamega County towards parity. Particularly, we pivoted on the accelerating progress towards gender parity through 4 areas. First, it's because governments are policymakers, they are conveners, and they can turbocharge the process of partnerships through SDG 17 and the progress through mutual accountability and multi-stakeholder partnerships. They are also a financer. They finance public wash infrastructure, and once these are available, women have more time to reinvest in businesses. They are also the biggest employer. As we move towards resilience and self-reliance, the activities impacted the sector positively. And for me, the biggest achievement is the fact that the female staff in Kakamega County Water and Sanitation Utility moved from 18% in 2015 to 48% in 2021. The impact of this activity continues to be showcased on this slide and continues to this slide as well. Also, it is worth noting that gender parity in water utilities can be able to improve utility performance, as you can be able to see with the data. Another interesting achievement was the fact that the water sector changed a lot in terms of even allowing women to be able to register for new connections without title deeds and also access them to finance. Therefore, they could be able to operate their wash businesses and improve their. It is said that what gets measured gets managed. Therefore, data is going to be priority, and this is high quality, timely, updated, and reliable data disaggregated by gender, amongst other several characteristics, from national level to grassroots level. Also, local governments perform best on the gender equality related issues in the sector, which coordinated and concerted funding and policy focus has been directed over. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Euphrasia. I think that's a very interesting perspective. We will move on to Chola, who will also give us her perspective.
Thank you so much, Grace, and good day to everyone. I'll go straight into my presentation. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about NWASCO. NWASCO is a water supply and sanitation regulator in Zambia, and we are one of the oldest regulators in Africa. We've been in operation for over 20 years now. Over the 20 years of our regulation, we oversee water supply and service provision on 11 utility companies, and we focus on efficient and effective service provision. We have a total staffing level of about 3,961. That is across the 11 water supply and sanitation service providers. And guess what? Only 16% of those are actually females. And that is the latest information that we have at the moment. And out of those, only 22% at managerial level, and 21% at supervisory level, and then 15% at lower levels. Next, please. So now what I want to talk about, and just to mention also that out of the 11 utilities, only 2 of them have female MDs. So the rest of the utilities are headed by male managing directors. Now, moving on to the next slide, I want to talk about what the real barriers are. And this I'm going to talk about from the experiences that I've been able to gather first as a regulator, but also from basically my own experience working in the sector. And like I was introduced by Grace, I have been working in the sector for over 15 years now. Next. So the first thing that I note as a barrier is actually the self-stereotyping. And this is something that we really pay a blind eye to. But as females, we grow up in cultures that are already stereotypic in nature. And due to our personal experiences and what is expected of us from society, and also our emotional weaknesses in general, we tend to just, stereotype ourselves, and we don't put ourselves, among our fellow male counterparts to be able to compete favorably for certain positions and certain jobs. So we get defeated just because of what we've been through. And even when we try to get involved in certain things, we don't do it with a view that we are going to achieve because of this self-stereotyping. The next aspect is actually lack of support. Now, what I've noted throughout my work, and both within my own work environment when I started out as a young female professional, and by the way, I was the only female, working in an inspectorate department within NWASCO. So this lack of support, actually, I noted that because of society backlash, fellow females and also men don't know how to handle the backlash from society. So they tend not to support you because they won't have the defense. Society has already created norms around how females should behave and so on, and what sort of work females should engage in. So that backlash is something that is feared by both male and female. So we tend to have lack of support. But also what I noted was that there's generally lack of hard work, and females sometimes tend to just take a laissez-faire sort of attitude. Like, okay, so I'm female, so I need to take advantage of my position. And I think that in some cases, we've taken this gender, struggle in a negative way, such that we don't want to put in our best. We think that we can take advantage of the gender situation. And then there's this issue of competition. Like, females don't support females, you are competing against your fellow female. You don't want to have females around you, you'd rather stick with the men and so on. So we don't support one another when we're working. And then there's lack of, role models, and also the issue of the unconducive work environment, which contributes to our struggle. Next slide. So now, how do we overcome these barriers? I have basically summarized our, this into three. So the first one is we need to get rid of this personal transformation. So self-bias, issues of inherent challenges, and all that societal backlash, we need to get rid of that. The second bit is that we need to be part of the transformation. So we need to support one another. We need to know what we want, and it shouldn't just be about what suits us. We need to walk the talk as females, and we need to target the source of these barriers and not just, shop around. And then we need to demonstrate our capabilities. So it's nothing to do with, I'm female, and I'll get selected because I'm female. It has to be on merit, and we need to be ready to compete favorably. We need to work hard, and we shouldn't be looking for special treatment. And then finally, we need to create a conducive environment for ourselves. So we need to provide safe, clean toilets, sanitary bins, flexible work arrangements. And I've seen females that work in these environments, and yet they cannot do anything within their powers to really create a conducive environment. And we need to really develop an accommodating organizational structure for other females to actually get involved and be part of the WASH sector. So basically, that is what I thought I could share. And these are really issues that I've been through and I've seen as we are going around, to regulate these utilities. These are things that we confront on a day-to-day basis. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chola. Yes, I like that. We should be part of the transformative action ourselves. That sounds great. To bring it home now, I'll call upon Sue. And Sue's presentation is great because it takes us away from focusing on the female, but highlighting what men and boys can also do. Sue, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Grace. So as you said in this short presentation, we're going to be focusing on how to engage men and boys effectively in sanitation and hygiene processes, and also how to mobilize men as allies in gender transformative change. So this presentation is partly based on a desk study done for the Sanitation Learning Hub in collaboration with WaterAid, WSSCC and FH Designs. And we're currently in the process of updating that document. And so we've also got some more recent examples from the Water for Women Fund, where my co-author Joanna works. So next slide, please, Tanya. Thank you. So to begin with, the rationale for this study was based on the observation that men and boys might not always be benefiting from improved wash outcomes to the same extent as women and girls. For instance, men and boys might be found to be less likely to wash their hands, and they admit that hand washing is not a priority within their daily routine. And similarly, use of toilets may not always be consistent for men, maybe because men don't want to share toilets with women, or else because they continue to open defecate in order to stop pits filling up, or else because where they work, they don't have access to sanitation. But these outcomes might also be because men are not always fully engaged in sanitation and hygiene processes. For instance, men might be less likely to attend CLTS triggering events or behaviour change sessions, perhaps because they aren't interested, but probably because they're at work at the time. And more generally, behaviour change campaigns haven't necessarily targeted men. For instance, hand washing campaigns often target mothers with children under 5. So although thinking on this has changed somewhat with the COVID-19 pandemic, this pandemic has also highlighted the need for more effective hand hygiene campaigns that target men as an at-risk group for the disease. In other cases, reaching men is considered to make programme implementation more effective by helping to increase household level prioritisation of hygiene behaviours, where women may have less access to decision-making or funds for purchasing soap and sanitation in the household. So these are some of the practical reasons why engaging men and boys is important, but I think more recently we've seen efforts to engage men and boys for some strategic reasons as well, such as transformative change in households and communities, as well as reducing gender inequalities. So more gender transformative WASH programming have promoted a role for men in sharing unpaid care work such as water collection, and otherwise aiming to avoid reproducing gendered stereotypes and roles. Next slide, please. So in this Frontiers document, we made a variety of recommendations on how men and boys can be better involved. For instance, we suggested some participatory tools that can reveal the different WASH-related workloads of women and men, which is intended to create the conversation about traditional gender roles and challenge some of the harmful gender stereotypes and norms. And there isn't time to go through all these recommendations now, but I'll put a link in the Pathable chat box for those that are interested to read more. But some of these recommendations can best be illustrated, I think, by the following examples from the Water for Women Fund partners, which are engaging men and boys to challenge harmful norms. Next slide, please. So in these examples, there are instances where men and boys have been specifically targeted to increase awareness and understanding of both the burden placed on women and girls from traditional WASH roles, as well as to highlight some of the challenges women and girls face as a result of menstruation. So for instance, in Vanuatu, World Vision have an awareness raising initiative to promote greater consideration of the support for girls and women during menstruation. Similarly, in Nepal, there's been attention to increasing men and boys' awareness and understanding to challenge taboos and societal norms. And in Bangladesh, World Vision have been using specific courtyard sessions for men and boys to raise awareness of menstrual health and hygiene, also with the aim of improving understanding and support. In Jaipur, during the COVID-19 pandemic, that shone a spotlight onto wash tasks and roles that have a bearing on the spread of the virus, including hand washing. And leveraging this, CFAR has supported the formation of male forums to promote awareness raising on hygiene issues, including menstrual health and hygiene. The International Water Centre is also looking at gender norms through their research relating to care roles and child feces management, with the aim of promoting the role of fathers so that there are more opportunities for shared responsibilities and focusing on ways that do no harm. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this increased awareness is both to encourage and to nudge men to share wash-related workloads, as well as challenge others in their communities about gender and social norms that impact on women and girls. In some of the examples shared on the previous slide, in Vanuatu, Bangladesh and India, there are male-only sessions used, but at other times, men and women have been involved in training sessions together. Next slide, please. And as for the outcomes, male participants have noted that they have an increased awareness of these issues and have also changed their attitudes towards their female family and community members, both increasing respect for women and the role they play, but also understanding how wash issues affect and are beneficial to men and also the community as a whole. In terms of wash, there's been a greater understanding of both the importance of wash issues, such as hygiene behaviours, access to sanitation facilities, and this in turn has led to a realisation of the burden placed on women and girls to manage most wash-related tasks in the household. And in Jaipur, those male forum members said that because more people are now involved in wash tasks, the overall outcomes have been improved. And in terms of gender and social equality, there's been a decrease in gender-based violence among some examples, but a broader increase in sharing of wash-related chores and tasks in other examples, including dealing with children's hygiene and sanitation needs. And in some contexts, there's also been a lifting of the stigma associated with menstruation. Next slide, please. So in terms of the remaining challenges for the sector as a whole, there are still gaps in our understanding. I've just noted a few here, but they include about the tools and approaches that could further male behaviour change on wash, and in particular how to engage older men, since our younger men seem more willing to consider and change their wash behaviour and also challenge gender stereotypes. It's really important to think about ways of working that do no harm, so avoiding and mitigating backlash for women in a gender transformative context. And also how to work with and be guided by country level men's, women's and sexual and gender minority groups. So understanding what positive masculinities mean in different contexts. So that's a brief overview of our work on this so far. And as I said, we're developing another part 2 of the frontiers, which covers the latest thinking and the practical examples of ways of engaging men and boys in sanitation and hygiene programming. And when that's ready, it'll be available on the Sanitation Learning Hub website. So thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Sue. So we'll quickly move to our Q&A session. I'll hand over to Fanny. And Fanny, remember this is a speed dating session, so you have 2 minutes.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. Yes, exactly. So thanks, first of all, also from my side to the speakers for the very exciting and insightful presentations on gender transformative wash programming. As Grace announced, we are now moving on to the Q&A part. I can see in the chat basically 1 or 2 questions. Both are directed at Eufrisia Luseka. The first question is from Simon 2. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, the name. So the question is, or basically the statement, Kenyan utilities have low to negative financial returns. How was it possible to increase the workforce to an extent women in the workforce increased from 21% to 48% in Kakamega? Perhaps Eufrisia, you can answer that question.
Thank you so much. And I would say this, that first, let's remember that this change process has happened for the past 7 years. And change management processes are not easy. Actually, it was a painful process. It was emotional at some point. But again, the beauty of putting up systems in place, and when I talk about systems, I mean policies in place, is that they help you to go through the change process in a more easier way. Now, here we targeted on reviewing the whole HR manual. They had a manual, they did not have a policy in place. So we reviewed the same. The component of gender was just a clause in these documents. So all this was reviewed. And again, at the same time, we came up with a new gender policy for the water company, and gender issues were entrenched in all other operation manuals, as well as strategies and any other policy for the utility. So this informed activities on staff rationalization as well as staff appraisal. So it was not that the company did not want the male staff, but it was actually the system. If you did not qualify for your docket, you are removed from the system. So in this regard, when you look at the PowerPoint presentation that I shared, there's a slide that indicates that in 2015, the staff were 198. And in 2021, the staff reduced to 172. So this process is what informed the same. And then besides that, remember, in the Water Act of 2016 in Kenya, it indicates that water utilities need to be run in a commercially viable manner. So when we reduce the staff numbers, it means that the costs in terms of operations and maintenance of the utility come down. So actually, this benefits the company in terms of also improving their bottom line. And then I also saw a question from Chloe. So under Chloe, I would be able to mention that the interesting bit was the partnerships that they did with the sectoral actors. And this actually included the Ministry of Education. And here they were now working closely with the students, and they could be able to recruit and even offer activities like internship, apprenticeship, and the like, and even mentoring as well to the students. So this kind of ensure that the staff that are coming into the utility are quality. At the same time, they also came up with various policies and processes that were also supporting the women. Like for the first time, women could be able to get a longer maternity leave according to government procedures. And again, they could be paid during the moment. In the beginning, they were actually considering that women are quite expensive people because of such costs like health cover and insurance. They also came up with another one on WeBuy.
Given that it's a speed dating session, I think we need to move on, unfortunately, because we're behind time. But thank you very much for the great elaborations. And yes, at this point, I would like to really thank all the speakers and for the great insight, and for all our participants. Thank you so much for joining us at this hour, especially if you're in my time zone. At this point, given everything that we've heard, we don't want to leave this session hanging. So we want to wrap it up and look at other opportunities that we can have to continue this discussion. I will call upon two interesting networks that look at engaging women so that they can tell us a bit about themselves. I will start with the African Women Sanitation Professionals Network. We have Ada from there, so she can tell us about the network.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for such an interesting session already. Might just quickly to say, from everything we've heard, there's a critical part of all of this transformative system that definitely would rely on or require some level of organizing, some level of, collective action by the women, especially as with regards to how these issues around water, sanitation, and hygiene actually affect them. So really putting the woman at the center of the discourse. In that regard, I'm just going to be introducing to you this evening the African Women Sanitation Professionals Network. is a network of African women organizations and individuals, of course, who are committed to leading and promoting, in a very strategic and effective, promoting the strategic and effective engagement of women in the sanitation development space in Africa specifically, and then invariably also touching on how that contributing to the global discourse as well. As a network of both individuals and organizations, we want to ensure that there's a gendered dimension to the conversation around sanitation. And just to mention that the network is very focused on sanitation for very obvious reasons, which I won't go into because of time tonight, but we know how sanitation is often not considered in a lot of is not considered in as much as it should, not funded, not really focused on. Although it's in the more recent times, it's taking the center stage, but there's still a lot to be done. And yes, whenever we talk about gender and wash, it's very easy to find examples from the water utilities and all that. But with sanitation, there is still a huge gap. And so that's one of the main reasons why the focus of this network is on sanitation. Also, we want to, as a matter of a goal that we want to achieve, to see progressively, to organize and increase the number of women, build capacities of women and girls to engage in the sanitation conversations. And this engagement would not just be at the local operational levels where you come into communities and have meetings with them and talk, but it will be at the strategic level, pitching at governance levels as well, and also dealing within the academia, working with the academia, going into research that, will underscore how we then influence policies, programs, and initiatives at the Pan-Africa regional institutional levels, at national government levels, and non-state actors levels, and also with various partners that work particularly on the African continent. So in a nutshell, this is what the network is. It's open to any African woman who works in sanitation to join us. And in recent times, we're a very young network, started about 2 to 3 years now. COVID has affected us and slowed down our pace of progression as well. But then we're very happy to announce that we have a flagship national level organized network of professional women on sanitation in Zambia. Kenya is the colors you see, the countries you see in amber are the ones that we are prospecting and working, and there's some conversations and engagement going on in those countries. But the ones in Zambia is fully established and running. And we'll also be focusing a lot with partnership with, for example, Equal. I think some of them may be online here this evening with support from them and other networks and organizations supporting us to conduct initial baselines on the situation of women working in sanitation.
Thank you, Ada.
And
sorry,
and then,
I'll have to step in and cut you
finally,
where.
Okay. We're just also looking at forging relationships and partnerships with as many people as possible. I'll put in the chat box the link to join us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, so we move on to Ulrika with Women in Water and Sanitation Network.
Wow, thank you very much for having me here in this session. My name is Ulrika Kelm. I'm the chair of the Women in Water and Sanitation Network. I can just support everything that we have just heard, that are obstacles for professional women working in the sector. And this is actually the reason why we founded our network in 2019, 2.5 years ago. We founded it because we thought it was, or we felt the importance of a group of like-minded women working in the sector, working on SDG 6, and to find these women on a global level. So we have founded an international network where we embrace women from all different areas of work from within the sector, from academia to governmental to from private sector to utilities to research or international or multilateral organizations. And we invite them and we to join our network, and we have founded a global community of women who support each other, who understand the global issues that we face, the local issues that we face or regional issues that we face in respect of gender relation for professionals in the sector. We have different programs that we work on. For example, we have created a mentor-menteeship program. We do advocacy work through international platforms, international conferences, where we display our members, where we display the work of our members, and where we can share and applaud to the female success as professionals in the sector. And we also do training, we do give the visibility, and we do want to foster a strong female labor, I would say, part of the laborship in this sector. And at the end, we drive to empower women and to, well, hopefully contribute to changing something in the societies of this world, and to create an equality and equity in the labor sector. I just make it short because I see that we're running absolutely out of time. So all that I have prepared as a nice speech, I just cancel it. I just saying thank you very much for having our network in this very important session. And I'd really like to exchange with many of you on this topic, and to see how we can work together on this, because at the end, the sisterhood is what makes us strong. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ulrika. And over to you, Sue, in a minute.
Yes, basically all the information is on the slide. It's just to say that we'd like to keep the discussion going on gender transformative WASH programming and hear more about the gender transformative approaches that are being used in the sector. And so the Sanitation Learning Hub and GIZ are planning a half-day virtual roundtable to discuss this with different agencies taking these approaches. And so if you're interested to participate or to co-host, then please email us at the email address on the slide there, slh@ids.ac.uk, and we'll get back to you. Thanks ever so much, Grace.
Great, thank you, Sue. So in under 30 seconds each to our speakers, you can give us a takeaway message. Yes, I will start with Miles. You'll take home in less than 30 seconds.
Some great examples from around the world in this session. I welcome all of you to take those to heart and dive in deeper into each of the presentations. They're all very short, but I think all of us are very accessible to field questions and take on further exploration.
Thank you. Is Euphrasia still on? In 30 seconds?
Yes, I am. I would like to say that fund us women in water and you're going to see wonders. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Chola?
Yes, thank you, Grace. Mine is to just say we need to change ourselves first, transform ourselves as women, and then move on to transform society around us and create a conducive environment for ourselves. Thank you.
Great. And Sue?
Yeah, I think I'd probably like to highlight the importance of working with and being guided by country level representative groups that are working with men and women and sexual and gender minorities on understanding and applying gender transformative approaches. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for this session. We are glad to note that we had good attendance given the hour, and we're very grateful for everyone who's been here and for your attention. And to the speakers, we are indebted to you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
We hope to share the presentation, so we'll probably upload it somewhere in Cavill. where you can find the presentations, because due to time we had to speed things up. We hope that you'll be able to go through the presentations in detail after we uploaded them. I see there's a hand from Lucy Nkata. I hope we have a second for that. Lucy, you can unmute yourself.
Okay.
You're still muted.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to raise the issue of inclusion of women with disabilities in the as we discuss, or as we come around to really raise the issues of women and in sanitation, and the vast and unique challenges that these women are facing as a woman with disability. So it's a conversation we need to embrace and also think around it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. That's a very, very valid point, especially that we're looking at gender transformative wash. It should also cover the social inclusion aspect of things, definitely. Thank you.
I didn't get that Nini for the I did get that address for the Zoom meeting that will be hosted by, there is somebody who talked about an upcoming webinar, so I didn't get that address. I don't know how you will help us get it.
I'll just pop the link in the chat box on Pathable. Thank you.
So Sue will share in the link in Pathable. Thank you. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, from myself in Zambia and my colleagues all over the world. I think we can call it, we can say it's a wrap. Yes.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Nice meeting.